Why did you want to be a vicar? What made you want to be a vicar? How long have you wanted to be a vicar? I get these questions all the time. Let me let you into a secret. I never wanted to be a vicar. So why am I talking to you about wanting to be a vicar? Why did I not want to be a vicar, yet I find myself as a vicar? Well, a couple of weeks ago on the Sunday vlog, there was a question posted by JB8075, whose name is Roger, because he signs it Roger. He says, "Hi, I was wondering how long it took you to become a vicar and what kind of calling you had. If not too personal. Thanks, Roger." Not at all too personal, Roger. Thank you for your question. Really happy to answer it. I never wanted to be a vicar. Let me tell you what happened. I was 17 when I came to faith. I wasn't from a church-going family, but I came to faith at 17. I'll leave the whole story of how that happened for another video. And pretty much straight away, I wondered if there was a call to be a vicar, but it's really unusual. You see, I came to faith and started going to church in a little village church. The village that I lived in at the time had maybe 2,000 people, and the church maybe had about 70. This was the late 80s, 1987, and of those 70, about 15 were teenagers. Now you try and describe that now in the context of the Church of England in this country right now, and that's a big proportion of teenagers. Yet we went along faithfully every single week, and I found church dull, really dull. I loved Jesus, and I knew that he was real, and I knew that he knew about me and he cared about me, but his church was so dull. And my vicar was a beautiful, godly man. I could see something really incredible in him. But the reality was, I didn't understand a lot of what he talked about on a Sunday. Our services were what we would now call middle of the road traditional. So very liturgical. I couldn't invite my friends. What could I invite my friends to? I didn't have the confidence enough that I have now to be able to talk about Jesus and the difference he made in my life. I wanted to invite them to church, but I couldn't because it was just so boring. And that was the start of this call, I think. This sense that it shouldn't be this way, it should be different, and maybe I've got a role to play in that. So I did start to explore ordination really gently, just right on the edge. And I read within some of the Church of England's documentation, I read, one of the reasons that you should not pursue a call is if you think you can do the job better. And the truth was, I thought I could do the job better, or at least I thought the job should be done better. And so I gave it up. I didn't follow that call. And I guess through my 20s, I often describe it, the call went like this. Sometimes it came and then it went, and it came and then it went, and it came and then it went. And it's difficult to describe the call. There was no audible voice. I've never heard the audible voice of God. I would love to, and I know people that have, but I've never heard the audible voice of God. The best way I can describe it is like this. How do you know if you've been in love? If you've been in love, you just know there is something inside you. You can't put your finger on it. It's not a special voice, but there is something inside you that points to that bit of you that says you're in love. Or kind of not as beautiful an answer, but how do you know you're hungry? There's something inside you that tells you you're hungry. And there was something inside me that said this sense of call into church leadership. So that was in my 20s, and then it sort of went away a little bit. And then I had a job working overseas. Beth and I took Josh was 2 at the time, and I had a job working overseas in Cyprus. I was a civilian working for the military, and we went to the church on the camp, and the padre there, I think he spotted something in me, and he asked me, "Have you ever considered ordination?" I said, "I had." And he said, "Well, the chaplain general's coming out next week. Do you want to go and talk to him?" And I thought this was it. This was it. Somebody in authority was going to say, Mark, you are being called into ministry. We'd love you to train as a vicar. And I met with the chaplain general, and he was wanting me to say that I thought I was being called, and I couldn't do it because I just wasn't sure. I thought, is this about me? Is this about something else? I couldn't articulate that I thought God was calling me to be ordained in his church, to help lead his church. So the chaplain general was very kind. He said, go away, have a think about it. And then life changed. We came back to the UK. And I went back to the village church. We had a new vicar who was a really dynamic guy, very different to previous vicars there. And I was on the church council, the PCC. And it was a really unusual evening because Paul, my vicar, brought along a stack of books. And one of them actually is up here. One of them was this book, The Road to Growth, by a guy called Bob Jackson. And I don't know what it was. There was a stack of books, and Paul said, look, I brought these books. I don't know if anybody wants to read anything. And I just looked down the books, and this one just jumped out at me. The Road to Growth Towards a Thriving Church. And I thought, that looks interesting. I'll take that home. The next day, my kids got chicken pox, and I had to take some time off work to look after them. And you couldn't do an awful lot. Once you've sellotaped oven gloves to their hands, there's not a lot you can do with them. You just got to let them get on with it. So I started to read this book, and I got to the end of chapter 1, and I'm shouting, this is how it's meant to be. This book is an empirical study of areas in the Church of England where the church is growing numerically. It's not all about numbers, but numbers are part of it. And it's full of charts and graphs, but also some commentary about what was going on. It was in this book that I learned about the Alpha course for the first time. It was in this book that I learned about new wine for the first time. And I devoured this book. I'm not a fast reader, but I read this book in about 2 days. And afterwards I thought, I think God is calling me into church leadership. And so I went to go and see Paul, my vicar, and I said, I think he's calling me. This sense within me, this thing I've talked about, that it's difficult to articulate, but it's here, would not go away. And so Paul invited me to go and see somebody in the diocese, somebody called a DDO, a Diocesan Director of Ordinance. And that started then a 3-year journey of me meeting with people, talking to people, being sent on a placement to go to other churches, which just infuriated me because here were examples of churches, again, failing to reach people that were like religious clubs. And what I didn't realize at the beginning of this journey was lots of people thought I was being called into church leadership. What they're waiting for me to say is, I believe I'm being called into an ordained role in the Church of England. And actually, once I understood that, I was able to say it really wholeheartedly. I got sent on a national selection conference, a BAP, in July 2010, and I thought I'd failed it. There's 30 or 40 of us there, all wondering if we're being selected for ordination, called for ordination. And I got asked some really difficult questions I didn't know the answers to. I thought, that's it, I've utterly failed it. But I hadn't failed it. It turns out they saw something interesting in me. They wanted to encourage me. They wanted just to push me a little bit and see how far they could take that conversation, take my knowledge. And I got recommended for training. The bishop said, great, we'll send you for training. So that was July 2010. September 2010, I started at Durham University as an ordinand and thought, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? I didn't go to university first time round. I didn't go when I was 18. I thought, I can't do this. And for 6 weeks I was thinking, no way, no way. Then something clicked. And it was something that was really different to anything I'd experienced before. It was in the middle of October, and we were gathered as a college for a communion service. And they told us that they were going to anoint us with oil if we'd like to have that happen. I didn't know what that was. If I'm honest, I thought it was nonsense. But I went out and I found myself kind of putting my hands out like this. And our tutor, who was leading the service, Kate Bruce, if you're interested, anointed me with oil. She put oil on my hands, oil on my forehead. When she put it on my hands, she asked God to bless these hands for the work of his kingdom. And it wasn't like a bolt of lightning, but something changed. It was incredible. It was like a burden and a pressure that I'd been putting myself absolutely lifted, and a realization that this is what I was meant to be doing. This call that I'd heard when I was 17 was now actually coming to fruition. So I was training for 2 years there at Durham University. A friend and I would joke that only God could get us into a world-class university. And then in 2012 I was ordained. I was ordained as a deacon. In the Church of England, that's what happens. First of all, you get ordained as a deacon, and then normally a year later you're ordained as a priest. And I was sent to Stockton Parish Church to be the curate, to be the apprentice, to train the next part, the final part of my training, to be a vicar. And so I served there for just under 4 years, and then in March 2016 the bishop asked me to stay, not as the curate this time, but as the vicar. And I was licensed to be the vicar of Stockton Parish Church in March 2016. I'm recording this on the 1st of June 2019, so I've been there just over 3 years. So there is my story of ordination. It took over 20 years for me to get to this point. And what have I learned in all this? God is faithful. He never gives up. It's quite funny, there are some parts in the Bible, I'm thinking of Jonah, if you're familiar with Jonah in the Bible, where God says to Jonah, don't go there, I want you to go here. And Jonah says, no, I'm going over there. And God never gives up on Jonah. Despite Jonah's anger and disobedience, he never gives up on him. And he puts him where he wants him to be, and he does incredible things through him. I didn't want to be a vicar because it was boring. I saw boredom. Jesus is the most unboring person ever to walk the face of the earth. You hang around with Jesus, the deaf start to hear again, the blind start to see again, the dead rise and start to walk again. Yet in his church, somehow we make him boring. It's not that there shouldn't be silence and reverence. I get all of that, that's really important. But why do we make him boring? It feels for me like 20 years were wasted because I was too concerned about myself and not wanting to be bored instead of being obedient to what God was calling me to do. Yet he never gave up on me. And I've got to tell you right now, I have the best job in the world. I absolutely love it. It sounds like a cliche, but it was the thing I was meant to do. I do believe God was calling me when I was 17. I don't know if I was meant to respond when I was 17 or whether I was meant to wait until the time when I did say yes. Because at 17 I was not very wise. I was daft and I was stupid, and I would have made a right mistake. It's not that I'm brilliant now, but I've just been around the sun a few more times and picked up a bit of wisdom along the way. And I think God can better use me where I am now than where I was then. But let me speak to anybody who's listening to this now. If you think God is calling you and you don't know what to do about it, do something. Go and talk to your vicar. If you're in Stockton, you can come and talk to me. But go and talk to your vicar in your church. It's the best job in the world. If it's truly from God, then that will come to pass and you will take up that role. I hope that answers your question, Roger. I really appreciate you taking the time to post it. Thank you to all of you who watch this. It amazes me. Just the other day, I found out 2 more people that watch this and they get very excited about it. So thank you, Emily and Tom, for watching this. Emily's my goddaughter and she's getting married to Tom in 2021. Guess who's doing the wedding? If you have a question, please post it below. Get ahead across to YouTube, post me a question below. I promise you I'll answer it. If you haven't already, please subscribe. I do enjoy making these videos. I'd love you to tell me what it is you want to know, and I'll try and make them engaging and interesting. And I think that's it for this week. Yeah. Yeah.